It's 1993, a random Monday. A friend at school tells you he visited his cousin who lives in another town at the weekend and has a ton of cool new games. When school finishes, you rush home and grab a pack of 10 3.5-inch floppy disks, then race over to your friend's house to try them out, using, of course, a pair of chunky plastic joysticks with oversized triggers and suction cups to stick them to the surface of a desk. Before leaving, you carefully choose which games you want copies of, and when you arrive home you spend 10 minutes with a pack of felt-tip pens, designing logos and drawing little pictures on the disc labels before locking them away, literally locking them away with a tiny flimsy key in a 40 deep disc case, your most treasured possession. Now if you've spent the last minute or so floating along with me on a rising wave of nostalgia, 1993 Shenandoah will almost certainly offer something to please. If you've spent the last minute or so asking yourself what a floppy disk is, you might be better off saving your money. This game's arrival on Switch is actually something of a story in itself. Originally developed and pretty much completed by 4 Swedish teenagers for its intended platform, the Amiga, way back in, you guessed it, 1993, for whatever reason it never made it to release and lay lost and forgotten in a basement until, more than 2 decades later, it was rediscovered and is now being brought to arguably the most successful console of the present day. This backstory is readily apparent in almost every aspect of the game. The visuals, the sound, the gameplay, everything about it screams both 1993 and, less excitingly, Europe. It plays very simply. You use 2 buttons, one to fire and one to bomb. You start with just a standard forward shot, but as the game progresses, can add more weapon slots to your ship, up to a maximum of 4. All of these weapons fire at once, and all, along with your ship itself, can be upgraded. Everything being done in a shop which springs up between stages and using money you collect from downing enemies. The weapon variety is pretty massive, and how you react to its implementation will most likely dictate how you feel about the game. The shot types cover a very large range. You have homing missiles, spread shots, close range flamethrowers, bounce shots, lasers. Basically every staple you can name is available, along with more than a few quirky numbers too. But you may be asking, how do you design stages so that they can be approached and enjoyed regardless of which of this vast array of weapons players have picked? Well, the short answer is, you just can't. In some stages, if you didn't buy the right weapons, you just can't hit certain enemies. And if you do buy and level up the best weapons, you're going to be cruising through many stages without a care in the world. If you can accept this, or even just forgive it as par for the course for a game developed over 20 years ago by literal kids, you're probably going to have a good time. If you consider this sort of lack of optimization to be nothing more than a frustration, you won't find much else to redeem things here. The stages are quite numerous, 15 in total, and progressing through them all is fun enough. Despite some issues with enemy shot visibility, although nowhere near the sort of issues we often see in Euro shmups, see my review of Jets and Guns, in general attacks come in well-paced waves, with little of the alternating empty downtime followed by impossible to parse chaos we often associate with Euro shmups. Your ship moves fluidly enough, and there's none of the sudden crashing into background objects either. Admittedly, there's not much variation or innovation in the gameplay. You just hold down fire and blast whatever floats in, occasionally skipping through an environmental hazard or two, but overall, it's solid, simple fun. The visuals have deliberately retained their Amiga-esque look, and boy do they bring back the memories. The talking heads look like they're straight out the Team Select from Speedball 2, and while murky would usually be a critical word to describe graphics, here the reduced colour palette is both nostalgia-inducing and in many ways atmosphere building. All the ship types and enemies have classic simple designs, but there are a few cool little set pieces in the backgrounds,
most notably the Dragon of Stardust in the first stage. The music, as you might have guessed, also captures the time it was developed in perfectly, and the sound effects are, again, in fitting with the rest of the game, solid if unspectacular. There's not really much more to say about the game, and this is arguably its weakest point. There are no unusual mechanics or tricks to learn, there's little point in memorizing stages, in fact there's very little replay value beyond going back to try all the different weapons. Not least because there's not even any sort of locals leaderboard for scoring. Not that it would matter much because there are no real scoring mechanics to speak of anyway. The game is pretty much a straight run from start to finish, with just the last boss who appears after the credits have rolled, offering much of a challenge. Now, as I've tried to make clear, if you have no nostalgia for this type of game, or if you're on the lookout for the next shmup to plow 50 plus hours into, this isn't going to fit your needs. It remains good, simple, competent fun, but with its lack of innovation or any interesting mechanics, for those people, it's probably only about a 6 out of 10. If, like me, this footage is whizzing you back to your childhood, you're probably going to be far more forgiving and far more likely to enjoy the package. And I would think even an 8 out of 10 for pure enjoyment on an individual level wouldn't be an outlandish score to suggest. Overall, I'm going to hedge my bets and give it a 7, but I think it ought to be obvious to you by now whether the game is likely to appeal to you or not. I hope there are going to be a few of you out there, like me, for whom this is going to be a great, geekily indulgent space ride. But whichever side you fall on, if you do pick it up, let me know your thoughts below, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Cheers.